So, how exactly did fruits considered garbage turn a poor boy into a billionaire? Seriously, it sounds completely made up, right? Like an urban legend. But I promise you, every single bit of this is grounded in. All right, let's get right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are going to unpack one of the most incredible, literally mind blowing rags to riches stories you will ever hear. I mean, we're looking at the ultimate underdog tale here. A story about a kid who started with absolutely zero, nothing, and somehow managed to build a staggering billion-dollar empire. And you know what the craziest part is? He did it using what everyone else thought was just completely worthless trash. It's an absolute masterclass in seeing massive opportunity where everyone else just sees garbage. And honestly, the lessons here are just as relevant to us today as they were over a century ago. So, how exactly did fruits considered garbage turn a poor boy into a billionaire? Seriously, it sounds completely made up, right? Like an urban legend. But I promise you, every single bit of this is grounded in historical fact. Today, we're going to trace exactly how discarded waste at these chaotic shipping ports became the rock-solid foundation of an empire. An empire that would actually go on to rewrite the entire map of Central America. To really understand this, we have to start at the beginning. Sam Zemurray's story kicks off in a tiny village in western Russia. When he was just 10 years old, his father, a poor farmer, passed away. Suddenly, his family is plunged into just extreme poverty. I mean, survival became an agonizing daily struggle. So by the time Sam hits 14, he makes this drastically heartbreaking choice. Leaving his mom behind, he takes whatever tiny savings they had, buys a one-way ticket, and spends 15 grueling days on a ship to America. He arrives completely alone. No money, nowhere to stay, and he speaks zero English. All he has is a piece of paper with a distant uncle's address. To survive, this kid takes literally every odd job he can get his hands on. Sweeping floors, running deliveries, you name it. But here's the thing. He was incredibly observant. He just soaked up every conversation, every transaction, figuring out exactly how businesses actually functioned. And that razor-sharp observation brings us to 1893. Sam is 16 now, and he has this realization. Sweeping floors is never, ever going to change his life. If he wants to make it, he has to go where the big money is changing hands. So he hops a train to a bustling port in Alabama, a couple of 100 kilometers away. The docks there? Absolute unadulterated chaos. Ships from Central America unloading, merchants screaming, money literally flying around. But right in the middle of all this madness, Sam sees something that makes his jaw drop. Back then, bananas were this exotic, super rare fruit. Yet right in front of his eyes, thousands of perfectly good, just slightly ripe bananas are being casually tossed into the trash. Remembering how he and his mother nearly starved? Man, it broke his heart. But it also sparked a wildly ambitious idea. See, Sam spotted this massive inefficiency in the market. The United Fruit Company, which was the absolute giant of the industry back then, used a super strict sorting system. Green bananas, those were premium. They could survive long train rides across the country. Yellow bananas were discounted for local traders. But then you had the ripe or reject pile. These had dark spots, they were perfectly delicious to eat right in that moment, but a huge risk to transport. Every single shipment, about 15% of the total cargo, ended up in this reject pile. And the corporate giants, they just threw them all away. Literal garbage to them. Now, what Sam does next is absolutely crucial. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out $50. That's it. That was his entire life savings, scraped together penny by agonizing penny from years of brutal manual labor. To put that into perspective for us today, that's equivalent to about $5,340. And this 16-year-old kid decides, you know what, I'm going to risk every single cent of this on rejected, rotting fruit. Just picture this scene for a second. A 16-year-old immigrant speaking heavily broken English just marches right up to the executives of the massive United Fruit Company. He proposed buying thousands of bananas that absolutely no one else wanted. The corporate guys, they were stunned. But hey, for them, it was a dream deal. They were literally going to dump this stuff into the ocean anyway. So getting paid cold hard cash for it? No way they were turning that down. They agreed on the spot. But okay, here is where the absolute sheer panic sets in. In theory, Sam's plan was brilliant. In reality, he was in a literal race against time. He loads this massive haul of ripe bananas onto a freight train, but the train is excruciatingly slow. It stops to load other cargo, it stops for driver changes, it stops for track clearances. Sometimes it's just sitting there on the tracks for hours. And with every passing minute, right in front of Sam's eyes, his entire life savings is literally turning brown and rotting. He realizes with total horror that if he waits until the final destination, he's going to have nothing left to sell but total mush. So what does he do? He doesn't panic and give up. He pivots fast. He jumps off the train at a random stop, sprints to a Western Union telegraph office, and sends this urgent message to every local merchant and street vendor at the upcoming stations down the line. His pitch was basically, hey, I have a shipment of incredibly cheap bananas arriving on the next train, and if you help me sell them, I'll give you a cut of the profits. He essentially created an instant pop-up market right on the train platforms. Absolute genius. And it worked. Station after station, for an entire week, the train would pull up and crowds of eager buyers were just waiting there. When he finally reaches the end of the line, his freight car is totally empty. He counts his cash. After his initial investment, he had made a pure profit of $50. He doubled his entire life savings in one trip. But honestly, far more valuable than the money was the proof. His wild, desperate concept actually worked. It's just an incredible reminder that speed, agility, and out-of-the-box thinking can totally outmaneuver slow traditional corporate logistics. This single, crazy moment became the foundation of his entire business strategy. The massive corporate giants were all ruthlessly fighting over that 85% premium green and yellow market, right? A market that required incredibly complex logistics and massive overhead. Sam, he didn't even try to play their game. He just completely owned that 15% unexploited ripe market. He was scrappy, he moved incredibly fast, and the best part, he had absolutely zero competition. So he just kept doing it. He repeated this process day after day, week after week. The guy became an absolute machine. Over the next decade, he managed to fully systematize the chaos. He knew exactly what to buy, where to send it, and who to sell it to. By 1903, Sam Zemurray had gone from a 16-year-old kid with $50 to generating millions in sales. He was now the biggest buyer at the Alabama port, dropping straight cash for massive bulk orders every single day. But here's the catch. When you get that big, the giants start paying attention. Sam was flooding the market with cheap, accessible fruit, and that was starting to directly threaten the premium demand of the United Fruit Company. So, Goliath decided it was time to crush David. United Fruit started playing really dirty. They'd purposefully delay his trains, they suddenly cut his promised supply in half, or just sent him away empty-handed. They even started intentionally dumping their own sheep inventory into his specific markets just to totally destroy his profit margins. Sam realized pretty quickly that as long as he relied on the United Fruit Company for his supply, he was completely at their mercy. So we get to his next massive pivot. He finds an investor, a guy named Ashbel Hubbard. And together, they buy a small shipping fleet and a business called Cuyamo Fruit Company, which came with over 100 acres of prime land. Sam's bold new strategy? Cut out the middleman entirely. He was going to grow the plants himself on his own land and export them directly to the United States on his very own ships. But wait, this is where the story takes a truly bizarre twist. Guess who steps up to invest in Sam's brand new independent venture? The United Fruit Company itself. No joke, they bought a 10% stake. Why on earth would they do that? Well, United Fruit was smart enough to know Sam was a serious threat, and they wanted a piece of whatever he was building. And Sam, buying land and ships is insanely expensive. He desperately needed the upfront capital, even if it meant taking cash from his biggest rival. With the funding finally secured, Sam didn't just sit back in some comfortable corner office in America. Oh no, he moved directly into the brutal, unforgiving jungles of Central America. This was not some ready-made farm. He faced suffocating heat, the constant threat of malaria, venomous snakes, scorpions, the whole shebang. But this is exactly what separated Sam from the corporate suits. He was actually out there in the mud, clearing trails and planting seeds shoulder to shoulder with his hired laborers. He literally built entire villages right in the middle of the jungle for his workers. And because he bled and sweat right alongside them, he earned their deep, unwavering respect. Beyond the grueling physical labor, Sam also quickly mastered the ground reality of Central American politics. He didn't rely on reports from middle managers. He rode out on horseback to test the soil and study the rivers himself. And crucially, he learned how the local political system actually worked. He started meeting personally with influential power brokers and government officials. By figuring out exactly whose palms to grease and which political levers to pull, Sam rapidly acquired massive amounts of incredibly cheap, highly fertile land. But his absolute thirst for expansion suddenly hit a brick wall. And it wasn't the jungle this time. It was his own partner. Sam's philosophy was simple: expand at all costs. He kept finding these amazing deals on huge plots of land and wanted to scoop them up instantly before United Fruit found out. But they were already in heavy debt, and the traditional banks flat out refused to give them another dime. His partner, Ashbel Hubbard, was super cautious. He wanted to settle their existing debts first and just completely refused to approve the expansion. The two partners were totally deadlocked. Now, Sam wasn't going to let anyone stop him. Since the traditional banks said no, he did the unthinkable. He turned to the criminal underworld. He borrowed an absolute fortune from loan sharks at a staggering, suffocating 50% interest rate. Let that sink in. 50%. And what did he do with that underworld money? He forcibly bought out his own partner, kicking Hubbard out of the company entirely. So now, Sam holds 90%. United Fruit still holds their 10%. Sam is finally the sole decision-maker of this rapidly growing empire. But he had put absolutely everything on the line to get there. He was burdened with catastrophic, high-interest debt. Think about it. If a flood, a drought, or a pest outbreak ruined just one single harvest, he wouldn't just lose his business. He'd be answering to the underworld. It was all or nothing. He was either going to build a massive empire, or he was going to be completely crushed beneath the weight of his own insane ambition. Which brings us to a final, absolutely chilling question. With devastating debt, fresh underworld ties, and 90% ownership, was Sam's incredible gamble about to shake entire governments? I mean, what started as a poor 16-year-old kid selling rejected bananas from a train platform was about to evolve into a literal geopolitical powerhouse. In his desperate need to protect these highly leveraged investments, business was no longer just about business for Sam. It was about to involve politicians, actual military force, and the total restructuring of power in Central America. Just how far would the Banana King go to protect his crown? Well, that is a wild story for our next explainer.